Hey guys, if you can't tell by what's in front of me, today we are finally getting to start some seed starting up here. I'm in zone 1A, which means that my last frost date is June 10th, and that means that Friday, April 1st is my 10-week out from frost date. And so that means that I get to start my peppers today. So we're starting 3 different varieties. We're gonna go with a jalapeno from Early's Farm and Garden in Saskatoon, the California Wonder Bell pepper, and the Wild Rose Heritage Seed Early Jalapeno pepper. So I plan everything out in my garden book first. So that's what I have here. I'll be referencing throughout the video. So I want to end up with 10 jalapenos and 6 bell peppers. So that means I'm going to start around 15 jalapenos and around 10 bell peppers. So that is all we're starting today. It's the beginning of seed starting season, so I don't have anything ready to go, but thankfully I do have some stuff from last year as well. So I've got some old tags here that I'm reusing. These ones I just got off Amazon. And I have my seed starting tray, which I got from Peavey Mart. And yeah, so basically we have the dirt soaking in some water just to make sure it's moist. We're gonna load up the tray with soil, plant these, and then get them set up ready to go. Normally I start all of my seed starting stuff in my little greenhouse-ish type seed starting area in the basement. But because I've had trouble getting my peppers to start properly and the upstairs is significantly warmer than the basement, I'm actually gonna try starting just the peppers upstairs this year to see if hopefully the little bit of added warmth in a south-facing window will make any difference with my germination and the health of my start. So let's go. So hopefully from this angle you guys will be able to see what I'm doing, but first I'm just gonna start mixing up some of the soil, making sure that it's nice and wet. We just got back from our vacation in Vancouver and it was so springtime feeling, and so it was a little bit more of a shock coming home, and then having it snow this morning even. Really started to look forward to spring, and then Mother Nature kind of snowed on my parade, so to speak. So by seed starting, I'm at least getting a little bit of the feeling that spring is coming, and the temperatures are starting to warm up and snow is starting to melt. It's been about -6 for a high today so far, but that sun has so much more energy now that we're into spring here. So this is actually the tray that I use for bottom watering that actually holds the individual cells, but I just like to use it to mix up the soil and make sure that there's nice moisture in it. And then once this is empty, I'll move this tray back into here and we'll put the lid on it. Just make sure if you're doing it this way that you just put something underneath to catch the water from the soil, because it does tend to leak a little bit. A lot of the time when I'm seed starting too, I'll put on like a podcast or a YouTube video in the background, or even just some music. But I definitely don't recommend wearing anything you want to ruin, because I don't know if it's just me because I'm clumsy, but I tend to get soil everywhere when I do this. Part of it's probably just because I'm rushing, because I'm just super excited to finally have some plants, but either way, it all washes out usually. So you'll probably notice that I'm not sticking a plant tag in every single cell where I'm putting a plant. I like to just mark them at the end of the rows. Last year I was writing the actual individual amounts on here, which is why there's a 6. But this year, since everything is multiples of 5, I'm just doing 5 cells. So for the 15 jalapenos, that's 3 rows, and then for the 10 bell peppers, it's 2 rows of 5 cells each, which just makes it a little bit easier to keep track of. And then you're not using as much tags either, because even though they're not super expensive, they're also not super cheap, and so you can make a pack extend quite a bit longer as long as you just stay organized and know what plants are where. My gardens have always been pretty small, so far I haven't like lost track of what something was, but I did have a tree dump once. And so it was just kind of a, well, I guess we'll wait and see what they grow out to be. Thankfully, it was something like tomatoes and peppers where it was very obvious to tell which ones were which. But that's not always the case, as with these jalapenos and bell peppers. If they got mixed up, it might be pretty tricky to tell them apart at first. And especially if you have things with different climate requirements or different watering needs, you don't want to be mixing them up before you're putting them out into your garden. Okay. That about does it there. Oh, I forgot my little dabber stick. I'm gonna be right back. Alright, so I have my little dabber stick, and if you guys have trouble planting your seeds too deep, definitely recommend grabbing one of these. This came with a kit in Amazon with some of the labels, but it does have the measurements marked right on it. I don't know if you'll be able to see because it's all green, so you can measure your depths. And then I like using this one for getting the cells out of the tray once they're ready to transplant up. So I have 15 jalapenos in 2 different varieties. I've never grown this variety before, it's new to me, but looking at the season length, this one is saying 60 to 75 days to maturity, and this one is saying 60 to 85 days to maturity. So they're pretty much about the same. I think I'm gonna just do, I'm making this up as I go. I'm gonna do 2 rows of the early jalapeno and 1 row of the jalapeno from early, just because I don't know how spicy these ones are. I don't do super well with spice. My husband loves spice. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So the general rule of thumb when you're starting seeds is that to plant them as deep as the seed is wide. With pepper seeds, they're not that big. They really don't have to go very deep in. So I usually just make the tiniest little divot, and then actually more so just like put more soil on top of it than actually try to press it in. So if I can get into this envelope, I need an envelope opener or something. There we go. So we're gonna do 5 of this variety. So there they are. As you can imagine, these seeds are super tiny, so they only need to be going down like maybe that deep. So we're just gonna make, I think I'm gonna do these ones on the outside. Just gonna make the tiniest little indent in all of these here. Basically just like moving a little bit of soil out of the way. And then we're gonna drop one of these in. And then we'll cover them up. You don't have to do exclusively just 1 seed per planting cell. I like doing 1 seed and planting more just because I do have a lot of seed starting space and my garden is fairly small. But if you watch videos like Jessica's from Roots and Refuge, or Jill from Whispering Willow, or any of the other seed starters, you can also just seed multiple seeds per cell and then thin them out if you end up having extras, or separate them out if you end up having some missing in other places. I think one of Jessica's recent gardening videos went over that really, really well. So basically I'm just barely putting enough soil over these to cover them, and it's already nice and damp because we soaked it in water beforehand. And those ones are ready to go. We have planted our first starts of the season, and I cannot wait. Okay, so that means the next 2 rows we are going to do the Wild Rose early jalapeno. All of my seeds I've selected for my growing season. Being Zone 1A is only 75 days, if I didn't mention that already. So that's my entire frost-free period, with extension and like things like row covers and the hoop house that I'm going to be setting up. I can potentially have a longer growing season. I just don't know what that is yet. And so until I know how long I can actually get, I am going to just stick to the shorter season varieties. And as you can imagine, the early jalapeno is known for being one of the early maturing varieties. Okay, so we have our 10 seed wells. Ooh, I'm almost out of these. I'm gonna have to put this on my list to order more. We have our 10 wells, so we're just gonna drop them in. And I like to drop them all in before I cover them up, because then I can see that every single one of them has a seed instead of like covering it up, and then I'm often forgetful, so I'll think back and go, did I actually plant that cell? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, not really sure. So it's just a little forgetful thing that it's easier for me to cover them all up at the end and just make sure that I didn't miss any. So we're just going along. And if you accidentally drop like more than 1 and 2, you can just leave it, because if you get an extra one, you get an extra one, and that way if something happens, you have a little bit of extra. Okay. So I have maybe 1 more season's worth of seeds of these left, but I do have a couple other pepper varieties that I'd like to try too, so we're just gonna make note of that in my little notebook to order more. I am horrible for taking notes as a gardener. I know I should do more, but I always seem to just forget in the moment, so that is definitely one of my garden goals for 2023, is to try and be a better note taker. Plus, what's an excuse to buy another cute notebook, right? Okay, so we're just gonna cover these up, and maybe I'll try and zoom you guys into this. So when I'm covering them up, I'm literally just pushing the soil over so that it's just barely covered. It doesn't need very much. Oops, pick that one up. Just a little bit over the top, and that is it. All right, I just took a quick break there to grab a coffee. Okay, we are at the bell peppers. So I have never grown this California Wonder. It says it's a 70 to 80 day maturity. So that should be within my growing season. Usually it'll say on the bag that it's 70 to 80 days from setting the transplants in the garden. So just make sure you double check that, because if it doesn't include that, you may have to start them even earlier. So these peppers are all going into the high tunnel or hoop house. So they should have a bit of extension. So even though it's pushing over the 75 days that I should have from planting out in the garden, I'm hoping to get actually somewhere between like 85 and 90 with season extension. So we're gonna have to see, but there should be plenty of time for it to put on at least a couple fruit. I have never been super successful with bell peppers. I have yet to get one to properly grow and make it out to the garden. So if these work, then I will be very happy with that. And once again, we are doing 10 of these. So I'm just gonna make all my little divots and then get to planting. So I am definitely super curious to know what you guys have started already. What are you starting this week? Seed starting dates vary all over the place, and I've had a lot of fun with my followers on Instagram as we've been talking about how different Zone 1A is from other places. A lot of the people that I follow and who follow me are kind of more the zones 3A, 3B, and kind of getting into the 4 and 5. But yeah, no, I always see all the people on the coast and in the States who are in zone like 6, 7, even zone 8 or 9 on the coast, and they're starting their seeds in like January, and everything's going on in the garden and the grass is green, and I get such bad FOMO from that. I just want it to be spring already, and sometimes that leads me to starting seeds way too early. And if you were following along with my Instagram page last year, you would have definitely seen that I started things back in like January, February, and I wasn't able to fertilize properly and give them enough light and space to grow how they needed to. So I do think that was a pretty big factor in why my garden was fairly small last year. So I learned my lesson. I'm practicing patience because it does not come naturally to me. And I have successfully waited, maybe minus a couple days, until my 10-week date for first frost here. Okay, so that is it for seed starting. These are planted. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna quickly tape up the seed containers so that I don't lose any, because I store my jalapenos and my bell peppers in the same box. I don't want them getting mixed up. So I'm gonna do that for both of these ones. That is the one thing I really like about the Wild Heritage seeds, is that they do come in like a Ziploc container, which just makes it really easy because you don't have to tape them and retape them or retape them every year. Some of the first seed packs that I bought back in like 2020 almost don't work as a seal anymore because they have been ripped so many times from taking the tape off and putting it back on again, especially for the things like the greens that I'm planting in the winter as well. So yeah, just a little interesting part there. So these are all planted. I'm gonna take this start, put it downstairs in just the container that I have going. And then I also have the light that I'll need to get set up. My husband has a lovely wood stand that I'm gonna use temporarily for these, but I think I'm gonna wait till he gets home to set it up. So I will add in a clip after this of what everything looks like set up. I guess I could quickly talk about the light. I got these from Earliest Farming Garden as well as on Amazon. It is the Sunblaster Nanotech T5. It does have the reflector. They're very affordable in terms of lighting. The bulbs lasted me about a year. I kept them on in the basement when I was trying to grow stuff indoors, which also did not work super great for me. But I did get like a full season with lots of hours on. So I think with these ones, if I were to actually only use them for seed starting, I might even get like 2 or 3 seed starting seasons with them. So far I've been very happy with these. They seem to work better than my cheaper LED lights do, even if they're a little bit more expensive to have to buy another you know, $10, $15 bulb every couple of years. So far that's been worth it for me. I don't have a ton of seeds to start, so that's probably why. But obviously look into what makes the most sense for your operation. So I'm gonna go get all this stuff cleaned up, make sure I clean up the table, and then I will see you guys in the next clip to show how it actually looks like set up and ready to go. All right, so we got the stand set up here and the seedlings are ready to start germinating. So I'm gonna keep this cover on them here until the first one sprouts, and then I'm gonna remove it so they get some air circulation. And I am gonna get the light hooked up above it. I just haven't quite figured out how I'm gonna do that yet. So I will see you guys next week for the update video. Have a great night and happy seed starting!